Good afternoon students, and today I am discussing about the SAQs. The coming examinations, what are the SAQs has comes in your question paper. So first I will that is explain what are the chapters in SAQ questions, the living world. So there are 9 chapters is there in the syllabus. So the living world and biological classification, plant kingdom, morphology, sexual reproduction in flowering plants, and as unit of life, and the biomolecules, ecology, and anatomy and histology. So these 9 chapters, what are the most weightage of chapters in SAQ questions has come in your question paper. The first is you can morphology of flowering plants. So LAQs is comes in the morphology of flowering plants, and also SAQs is also comes in the morphology of flowering plants. So what are the questions are discussed in the morphology of flowering plants? Let us see. The first one is called describe any 4 types of placentations found in flowering plants. Any 4 types of placentations. Actually 6 types of placentations are there. The given the choice is any 4 types of placentations in flowering plants. So each placentation it takes that is 1 mark only. Okay. So let us discuss what are the 4 types of placentations. How can you write the matter for the SAQ answers is 4 mark. The 4 marks question, at least you can describe the 4 points. For 4 types of placentations, they directly mention what are the 4 types. First one is called marginal placentation. You describe that the marginal. So here off mark is diagram and off mark is for matter. Marginal placentation. Marginal. So what is the marginal placentation? The ovules is comes from the ridge. So the ovules is comes from the ventral suture of the ovary. See that. You draw the figure here. So this is the marginal placentation. The placenta is develops from a ridge. The placenta is developed from the ridge, and ovules is arise from a ventral suture of the ovary. So the placenta is developed from the ridge, and the ovules is developed from the ventral suture of the ovary. At least what is the exact point in the SAQ question in marginal placentation is the ovules is arise from ventral suture of the ovary. See that. You can write the first point is ovules is arise from ventral suture of ovary. From ventral suture. Diagram 1, ventral suture of ovary. This is the first point, we mentioned that. First point. Next one is the placenta is developed from the ridge. Placenta. This is the ridge one. This is the ridge. This is the ridge. Develops from ridge. Develops from along ridge. Along ridge. The ridge forms 2 rows of ovules. So see that when you see the beans, French beans, the ovules is arise from the ventral suture of the ovary because the placenta is developed from the ridge. So the ovules are arranged in 2 rows along the ridge. See that. So and it forms 2 rows of ovules. 2 rows of ovules. So we explain this ovules. Example is beans. Pea plant. Pea. This one. At least you can mention ovules is arise from ventral suture of ovary. We mention exact that. So the diagram and 1 point and 1 example, that is the at least pea plant or beans. The next one is Here, another placentation is there, that is axile placentation. Axile. Axial placentation. See that, axial. So what is the axial placentation? The ovules comes from the central axis with septa, that is called as axial placentation. See that here the ovules is arise from the central axis. Look that. It is a multilocular ovary. The ovules is arise from the central axis. See that. If the ovules is arise from the central axis, that is called as axial placentation with septa. With septa. So you mentioned that here. That is ovules arise. Ovules arise from central axis. From central axis. From central axis. With septa. With septa. That is enough for that. With septa. So this is small diagram, and after that you can mention one point. The ovules arise from the central axis with septa. The examples is lemon, tomato, tomato. So this at least two examples are given that. The next one is see that. The next placentation is precentral. 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 Look that. Precentral. Precentral. So here is the ovules is arise from the central axis. Central axis. Without septa. Without septa. Without septa. See that. The ovules is arise from central axis without septa. Without septa. So that is, here is, look here. Here we mentioned that at least one point the ovules arise, same one, from central axis without septa. Central axis without septa. Without septa. Without septa. So that is called precentral. The examples for precentral is dianthus, dianthus, and dianthus and primrose. Okay, so these are the examples. So the marginal placentation is over, and axial placentation. See the same. The ovules arise from central axis with septa is axial. Ovules arise from central axis without septa is precentral. At least we mention the examples. What is the example for the axial is lemon and tomato. At least one example you given. In the precentral is at least dianthus and primrose. The next one is here. See that. The next one is parietal placentation. Parietal. So what is a parietal placentation? The ovules is arise from inner wall of the ovary. or peripheral part of the ovary, that is called parietal placentation. Parietal placentation examples is mustard and argemone. At least mention the definition and diagram and example, that's enough. The next one is parietal placentation. Parietal placentation. Parietal. See that the ovules which are arise from inner wall of the ovary. So look here, you mention like that, at least inner wall of the ovary. So simple diagram, inner wall of the ovary or peripheral part of the ovary, that is called parietal placentation. So you mentioned that the ovules arise from inner wall of the ovary, inner wall of ovary, or peripheral part, or peripheral part, or peripheral part. So what are the examples for? At least we mention one example, but read two examples. If you forgot one is enough. So that is, you learn two examples, that is, one is called mustard and argemone. So example is mustard and argemone. So here one more point you mentioned here is the ovary is one chambered. It becomes two chambered due to the presence of false septum. In the case of mustard, here the ovary is here one chambered. See, here the ovary is one chambered. That is also you can mention that. Second point is ovary is one chambered and becomes chambered, and it becomes two chambered due to the presence of false septum. See here. So mentioned, it becomes two chambered due to the presence of false septum. See that. Due to presence of false septum. So you can impress the examiner a false septum. The student is mentioned the false septum. He was checking out. The student is mentioned the false septum or is not. Okay, this is. So first types of ovules. First you describe the definition of types of ovules, and next one example and one diagram. So four, you can mention that 4 types of placentation, 4 examples and 4 diagrams. That is over. The types of different types of placentations is over. The next coming to that.